In this video, I'm going to share with you an easy and fun approach that I use to write my scientific articles faster. Hi, my name is Edith. On this channel, I share tips, strategies, and resources to help you excel in your personal and professional life. When I wrote my first article, it took me more than 6 months from data analysis to produce the first draft, and it was a very painful process. Then, with each new article that I wrote, the process became faster and easier. I knew very well that I loved science, and if I wanted to pursue a career in science, I better start liking writing because you cannot do science without communicating your results. So in 2019, I decided to reflect on my writing process, and I noticed that I was following a pattern unconsciously, which I have summarized as the ABC approach to writing a scientific paper. In the ABC approach, I have broken the entire writing process from data analysis all the way to the first draft into three phases. So we have the ABC. The first is activate, then begin writing and correct. And these three phases consist of 10 steps in total. So we have 2 steps under the activate, 6 steps in the begin writing phase, and 2 steps in the correct. This process is so easy. I mean, the way it's broken down into small chunks, it makes the entire writing process easy. And so I hope that it will inspire you to start writing your paper and to finish it fast. I understand that people work differently, people have different writing styles. And so feel free to adapt it to suit your needs or develop an approach that suits you. And if you don't find this helpful, I'm sure there are a lot of resources out there that would help you to finish your article fast. So if you are ready to start writing, let's get in. The first phase of this ABC approach is the activate phase. And this phase consists of 2 steps. And the main purpose of this phase is to help you get unstuck and to start writing, to beat procrastination and writer's block, and to get writing. The first step is make a rough sketch of your article on an A4 paper. Before I start writing any document or creating any document on my computer, I always take an A4 paper and I create a rough sketch of my paper, how I want the paper to look in the end. So here I'm structuring the article into clear sections to create a coherent story of how the paper is going to be in the end. And once I do this, it takes all these ideas. I'm thinking, where do I start from? I have so much data. It takes all these things from ideas in my mind and it converts them into simple, actionable steps that I can follow one at a time to get my paper written. So once I do this step, I feel more energized to write. I don't know, it just comes naturally to me that once I create this rough sketch, I'm looking forward to the next step. So here I'll just show you 2 of my recent rough sketches that I've used for writing my papers. So the first one is one of a paper I recently submitted. So I'll just scroll through so that you can see how it looks. You can see that the graphs are just sketches. They don't have to look pretty or anything. It just helps you to take all the data that you have organized in folders or ideas in your mind and put them on paper how you want your article to look in the end. And with this draft, you actually know where you are going and how to get there. So it's pretty simple to make. You don't need a lot of time. I usually make this draft in less than half an hour. And now I'll show you the second one that I'm currently working on. It's still in the writing phase, not completed yet. So same principle, just make a sketch, not doesn't have to be pretty. Just get all the ideas on paper into a rough draft so that it can help you, it can serve as a roadmap for you to start writing. So once I have the rough sketch prepared, It serves as a roadmap or a compass which I follow to continue writing my paper. And so once the rough sketch is ready, we move to the next step, which is to turn an empty Word document into a manuscript outline. So here I just create an empty Word document. I usually use Word for writing. So I create an empty Word document and I convert that into an outline. And here I just transfer all the major headings from my rough draft. So I have abstract, introduction, experimental, results, and discussion. So all the major headings from the rough sketch, I transfer them into this empty document to form the framework or the outline of my paper. So I'm going to be working on this outline from now on. And now, once you've created your rough sketch, you have your manuscript outline done, we are ready to start writing. And anytime I create these two documents, I feel energized to write, I feel motivated, and the writing becomes really enjoyable. And so I hope that this can help you also to kickstart your writing. Let me know in the comments if that is the case. And so if you're ready, just put on your writing coats and let's start writing. The second phase, which is the B, begin writing, is where you take your rough sketch and convert it into words on the outline. So this phase consists of 6 main steps. So we are talking about the methods, the data, results, introduction, and all that. So these are the core parts of your paper. Before we dive into the individual steps, I want to give you 3 tips which are important for making the most of the writing phase. The first tip is to get writing. So once you've created your rough sketch and your manuscript outline, there is this energy to start writing, like you feel motivated to write. And so make good use of this energy right away. Start writing, get writing immediately, and put as much on paper as you can when you are still motivated. Because if you wait for a few more days or a few more weeks, you might end up getting back into the waiting phase and procrastination phase. And so, once you prepare your rough sketch and your manuscript outline, get writing. The second tip that I would like to give here is to focus on progression and not perfection. So, usually, when we are writing, we want to make the sentences perfect. You end up spending several hours trying to write one perfect sentence, whereas you have a lot of ideas in your mind that you could also put on paper. So you have to separate the writing phase from the editing phase. So during this phase, that the B phase that we are just beginning to write, your focus should be on putting all your thoughts on paper and not on perfection. Don't try to get the perfect sentences right now. Focus on getting the ideas on paper. The third tip on writing is this whole writing phase is an iterative process, and so just go with the flow. For example, so you can first of all start with methods, and then maybe you write the conclusions and you come back to methods, depending on how you feel. So I would say just go with the flow. Sometimes you feel like working with origin, and so you do data analysis and data plotting. And other times you just feel like writing or reading, so then you write introduction. But right now I'm going to show you the exact process that I use 90% of the time, even though sometimes I'm skipping some steps and I'm going back and forth. But this is the process that I use 90% of the time. So I'm going to take you from how I go from the rough sketch to the outline all the way to the final written manuscript. Once I have my rough sketch and the outline done, I move to the next step, which is to write the methodology. I find the methodology section to be the easiest to write, especially if you have a well organized and well written lab book. You are just basically writing out everything from your lab book. So, this is the easiest step that I start with. So what I do is I take my lab notebook and then I just copy the processes or the experimental steps directly into the outline that I've created. So here I'll show you how the experimental section looks like. So I have this outline that I created and I just write the experimental section from my notebook all the experimental steps that I've recorded in my lab notebook. So this is the next step, which is the experimental section. Once I finish with the experimental session, I go to the data, getting my data ready, preparing my graphs and tables and all that. And I do this because once I've written the experimental session, it's in my head which experiments I have done. And so it's easier for me to just go directly into getting my data ready and also preparing the graph. So this is the most logical way that I follow. So once I do the experimental part, I go to the data analysis. And here I just represent all the data in different forms, so different ways of visualizing my data. I use pictures, some photos, SEM, and also some graphs, tables as well. So whichever format you want to represent your data, I usually go and prepare my data ready for the next step. Once I finish making all the graphs and preparing all my data, I have enough understanding about the results and how the outcome of the work. And so I feel very ready to write the results and discussion part. So after that, I move to the results and discussion part. So here I'm just describing the results the data that I've presented in the rough draft. I just put them into words. I try to describe what it is that I observed, and I make a relation to the relevant literature and how my results compare with that. So the results and discussion section is just about describing your result and putting it into perspective with the wider literature. And once I finish writing this section, I focus on the conclusions because I have already written the methods. I know what are the results. So I have an idea to write the conclusions, and this is the most logical way that I go. So in the conclusion section, I'm usually recapitulating on my key findings. What are the key findings from my research? Then if there is anything that still needs improvement or if there are any unanswered questions, then I also address that. And then I describe what are the implications of my results for further research or even other interventions available. And after I've written the conclusions, I go straight to write the introduction. And for the introduction, you are usually trying to set the scene for your work. Why is your research important? So the first part, I focus on the context, putting the research into perspective, why I decided to do this research. And then the second part, I focus on the gap. What is missing in the literature? Why I want to do this work? And then after describing the gap in the research, I introduce my work, the approach that I used, and the added value or what are the key findings in a summary form. So after writing the introduction, I write the abstract and keywords. And the abstract should be a standalone section that if anybody reads the abstract, they can understand what is it that you did. And so the abstract, I also include some context or justification why this work is important. Then I write briefly the approach and the key findings, and also what is the contribution, what was the main outcome of this work. So the abstract as well, I follow three sections, and then I just write some keywords that are related to the topic and will help people to find the article. So right now we've finished with the writing phase and we are moving to the C phase, which is correct. The C phase is where you fine tune your draft and try to make it into the publishable version, which will be sent out. And so this phase also consists of two steps. The first step is the copy editing, and under the copy editing, you are trying to check your drafts and try to correct mistakes and make it more concise. Check the tone and style if you need it to improve it or not. Correct for uneven sentence flows. If there is wordiness or redundancy, remove all that and fix any issues with tenses and grammar. And so this is where you spend a lot of time. You put on your editor coat and try to self-edit your work. And once I finish with the copy editing step, I move to the final step, which is the proofreading. So here I'm usually asking several people to read the draft and to give some feedback, and also if they can spot some mistakes, and so that you fix it before you send out your manuscript for publication. And so here I present a summary of the three phases: phase A, activate; B, begin writing; and C, correct. And then the 10 different steps that I follow. The first step is the A, which is activate. I usually prepare a rough sketch, then I make the outline. So these two steps help me to get unstuck and to start writing. Then the second phase, which is the B phase, is to begin writing. Just put all my thoughts on paper, and then I go from methods, then I collect my data, do the results and discussion, conclusions, introduction, and then abstract. And so this process is iterative, so you can go around and try to refine as much as possible. And then the final two steps, which are the copy editing and proofreading, will help you to refine your draft and get it to a publishable level. So these are the 10 steps that I follow when I'm writing my manuscripts, and it's really fast. I use this approach and it's kind of structured, and so I just go from step to step, and it helps me to finish my articles faster. And finally, I would like to give you some practical tips for writing. The first tip is to awaken the writer in you. So if you are doing any type of work that requires writing, if you are a scientific researcher, you cannot do good research without communicating your results. And so you have to just ignite that writer in you, that it's part of your job. And so you should get excited about writing. The second tip is consistency. So once you start this writing process, you don't leave it to chance. You have to be intentional about which times you want to write and put it into your schedule. So you can decide that you want to write, for example, 2 hours every evening before you go to sleep, or maybe 1 hour every day when you wake up before you go to work or something. So depending on your most energized periods or when you are most active, you can fit in your writing time and be consistent on it. So instead of writing 8 hours in one day, you can divide it into 8 short 1 hour sessions, and this is more effective. And then the final tip is to celebrate every little win. So you can make yourself a cup of coffee with milk or whatever is your favorite drink when you finish writing one section. So, for example, you can say, when I finish writing the methodology section, I will give myself one ice cream. Or so celebrate every little win. It helps to keep you motivated to keep writing. I hope by sharing my writing strategy with you, it will inspire you to kickstart your writing and finish that paper as soon as possible. Share in the comments below how you write your articles and what strategies and hacks you use. I'm really curious to learn new stuff. See you again soon.